She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand, hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cock-a-crow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cock-a-crow, dagaba, donkey bray, horse and neigh, even duck a quack. Cock-a-crow, dagaba, donkey bray, horse and neigh, even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life.
The sweet story that tells the people about life in the country. Uh, you know, good evening to everyone, and good evening to you, President David Arthur Granger. One of the things, though, I'm listening to that tune, and especially this time of the year, life in the country, and all the things we as little boy during these beautiful days, as we call it, festive season, we were all excited. What's your memories like? Fond memories growing up, especially in the country around holiday time, Christmas, preparing for the New Year, and so forth.
Uh, don't forget, I was born in the mid 1940s, so the I won't call it the rules, but the framework was quite narrow. One is family. You had to be home for that family lunch, that Christmas lunch, and of course, your mom hardly left the kitchen. It was cakes and baking all types of food, and expecting people to come from family members to come from overseas. But family is important, and food is next, of course, as a youngster growing up. Next to family was definitely food. This was the time for goodies, and things that you never got during the year would be available on that day only. Um, and of course, there'll be gifts, and I suppose children could be very selfish, that they want gifts. They can't say, "Oh, mommy and daddy are poor," but they expect gifts. But definitely at the head of the list was family, and then there was food, and then there was this giving of gifts, and the general mood of kinship, of people who are related to you. And of course, I'm not saying that it's in any particular order, but there definitely was church. And as a youngster, up to the age of about 12, I was in a choir. I've lost my voice now, but I used to be in the Christchurch choir. And you had to go to church. That midnight mass was an important part of Christmas. So I would say those are the four things that I remember from my own childhood growing up in the country. And I spent the first 12 years of my life um, in the country, and definitely going to church, the family, the food, the gift giving. Those days, my parents had to go down to New Amsterdam when we were in the quarantine to get some Christmas gifts and so on. And of course, all the members of the family who were perhaps at secondary school in Georgetown or elsewhere, everybody would come home. But Christmas was the festival of the year for the family. It was a time to celebrate the family, celebrate togetherness, and to celebrate who we were. We were a Christian family, and this was our festival. It was more important than birthdays, I can tell you that. It was more important than individual birthdays. Family was the festival of the year.
All right. Good evening to all of you who are now joining us. We just want to wish you a happy, happy holidays. But I recall on the quarantine a little village, between two villages, Philippi and Alnis. But when I was at Philippi village, we call it Philippi Farm. Just got to always, as they say, give a shout out to the people at Philippi and Alnis. Um, how do I say it? around this time, we were told we had to go to number 35, Kingdom Hall. And so I used to pass, and there were other kids playing and having toys. And my aunts, Lorna and Auntie Nella, they're both passed away. Pull my hand and say, "We as Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate Christmas." And I used to sit in that Kingdom Hall, vex, 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 vex. So, but there were good times, though. I had other family members who celebrated Christmas and so forth. And around Christmas time, it's a family, well, away from my Jehovah Witnesses family members. I love them, yes, but they never celebrated Christmas. I found out why later on. But I used to look forward for Christmas, though, and family members coming over, especially those from overseas, because you expect much from those from overseas. But if there were some visiting from Evesham or Epsom or Brighton, we used to get vexed. Man, they're going to come and eat out this pepper pot. Bringing nothing. All right. Well, as little boys, you say we tend to be selfish. We want toys and we want the food and we don't want the others from the villages. I mean, we all used to, as little kids, we had fun. We weren't thinking about who going to eat food, but we had fun, though. Today, we'll be dealing with as we know, the majority of Guyanese are Christians. Some Christians observe Advent as a time of expectation for the celebration of Christmas, the traditional observance of the birth of Jesus or the nativity, Jesus, his mother Mary, and earthly father Joseph, who together constitute the Holy Family, are at the center of Christmas. The Holy Family at the center of Christmas. So our first topic for discussion is, when is the Festival of the Holy Family celebrated in Guyana? You want to break that down for us, please, Mr. Ranger?
Well, this festival is quite obscure. It is possible that many of our viewers and listeners tonight may not even be aware that there's such a festival, the Festival of the Holy Family. But it is, in fact, an invention of the church. It wasn't something ordained in the Bible, ordained by Jesus or any of the prophets. It's something invented by the Roman church, and it is celebrated on the first Sunday after Christmas. So it is part of the Christmas festivities. And it's quite appropriate that, for those who believe in the Christ child, Jesus, and his mother Mary, and his earthly father, Joseph, that it is something which, apart from Christmas Day, should be observed. Christmas Day is certainly the birth of Jesus, as held by some Christians. As you point out, some people don't believe that he was born on that day. In fact, the Eastern Orthodox Church don't believe that he was born on the 25th of December. And there's good reason to believe that he certainly wasn't born on the 25th of December, but I'm not going to go into any doctrinal controversy now. But the festival itself is celebrated on the first Sunday after Christmas. I think in Guyana now it will be Old Year's Day. I'm not quite sure about the calendar, but it's the first Sunday after December the 25th. And after that, it was adopted by, I think, some other religious groups. The Coptics were always separate from Roman Catholics. Of course, as you know, there was a schism in the church, and the Coptics and Eastern Orthodox Church have different set of beliefs. And I know that the Eastern Orthodox Church, which includes Russia, Ukraine, and some of the Baltic states, the Balkan states, perhaps, they celebrate Christmas in January. It's very close to the 5th of January. So in the Catholic tradition, and I think it's embraced by some churches, the first Sunday after Christmas, Sunday, is observed as the Festival of the Holy Family. And as I said, it's obscure for some people. They go to church, they don't even know there's such a thing like the Festival of the Holy Family. But it's good. It's good that it should be associated with Christmas, and B, that people should pay attention to the importance of family. I think those are two good reasons why we should observe it when it falls. Of course, I suppose for devotees, you can observe, a festival, especially one concerning the family, throughout the year. Every Sunday is Family Day, and I know some families they must have lunch on a Sunday, a family lunch. So celebrating the Holy Family on the first Sunday after Christmas is part of the Western Christian tradition.
Sorry for a moment. Well said, and thank you so much, Mr. Granger, and good evening. And let's welcome those who are now joining us as we go to the second. The second, but before we go to the second, this topic for discussion, many of you may wonder what today's topic is. It's about the Holy Family, the Holy Family around this time of the year. That's what we're discussing. The second question, what relevance, Mr. Granger, does the idea of a Holy Family have for Guyanese? I know we have touched on it a little in terms of family members coming together, and many of us, especially when I was a little boy, we look forward to those coming from the US because the barrels will be smelling a different way, the boxes and every single thing, the shirts, the pans. As we said, when we were little boys under quarantine, the things smell America, America. Everything smelled different. You just got to smell it and you feel so nice about the whole idea. But let's get to the second. What relevance does the idea of a Holy Family have for Guyanese? Please, sir.
The Holy Family is essentially a Christian concept, a Christian invention. Um, and maybe non-Christians wouldn't be attracted to the idea. But let us look at it from the other point of view. There has been some criticism of the family or the collapse of the family, dysfunctional families. When you hear about school violence, when you see, antisocial behavior, maybe the first thing that enters people's heads or the first criticism is, what sort of family this chap comes from or this girl comes from that would tolerate this type of behavior. It always comes back to the family being blamed. If there is some fight at school, there's some reflection on the family breakdown, and people try to blame the parents. The fact is that many families are headed by women now. I don't know how many, the statistics don't tell us how many families are headed by women, but it is meant to be a criticism of the family. It doesn't mean that a family with a mother and a father, a husband and a wife, is necessarily better behaved. But the tendency is to blame the family breakdown. And of course, there are a lot of very strong, well-behaved students at school, very bright, who have come from single-parent families. And there are many persons who are ill-mannered who've come from, families with both parents. And we've seen examples of that, in which, some irate parents would go to teach the teachers a lesson. But you can't blame the child for that. When in fact you can see clearly where the child's unruly behavior came from. If the father would leave his workplace to go to the school to teach the teacher a lesson, you can see, you can look at the causes of that misbehavior. So what I would say is that whether you are religious or not, you're Christian or not, whether you believe in Jesus, Mary, and Joseph or not, what we need is a time of the year on our national calendar when the family is recognized and celebrated, and things which make for a good family are emphasized, and things which are dysfunctional and which pull families apart, and things which cause conflict or controversy with the family are resolved or diminished or eliminated. I would say that the observance of a family day is relevant. Maybe Hindus and Muslims may not choose to call it the Holy Family. And in fact, the title of this program, The Holy Family, is itself borrowing from the church. People may very well ask, is the family holy? Um, is the concept of a holy family just pure fiction? But my view is that regardless of the criticism being leveled at the behavior or misbehavior of children, we must strengthen the family. It is impossible to hold an infant in your hands, as you have done, as I have done, parents, I think most fathers would have done, and not tell yourself this child is completely helpless without the adults. And there must be somebody who cares for that child, who loves that child, who nurtures that child, and who takes responsibility for the child's upbringing. The child cannot do it on her own. The child will die. The child is helpless. And it is the family, it is that crucible, it's that cocoon, which makes the child, especially in the early years, the first 3 years particularly, what he or she is to become. So it is relevant. The concept is relevant. Don't worry with the labels. We don't have to call it the Holy Family. Let us call it Family Day. Let us call it a day in which mother, father, whether or not there is a formal marriage between them or they're living in some union, let us celebrate the occasion every year when there's mother, family, child, or children who are committed to ensuring the child's successful development in terms of education and behavior, achievement, and so on. So I would say it is a relevant idea. It is not necessarily a Christian idea. As the saying goes, it doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat. If it catches rats, it's a good cat. And if the family day helps to build strong family, let's have it. It doesn't matter who invented it. It's certainly not a devil's invention. It's a good idea, and I think we should embrace it.
A good idea. We should embrace it. Miss Washington is with us. Good evening, Miss Washington. Good to see you. And
good evening, Mark. Good evening, Mr. Granger. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
yes,
Thank you,
and,
Shalal. It's a pleasure to see you again, and happy Christmas to you in advance.
Thank you.
Everyone this evening, those who are watching us right now are happy, at least with the discussion dealing with the Holy Family. Just prior to you coming on, Miss Washington, we dealt with the first. When is the Festival of the Holy Family celebrated in Guyana? We just concluded with the question of what relevance does the idea of the Holy Family have for Guyana, as we prepare to move to the third question. But before we do, what memories do you have during the time, the festive season, so to speak, in Guyana as a little child growing up with your family?
Yes, I remember the festive season was always a very important time in Guyana. We would ensure, my mother would ensure that we cleaned and decorate the house the night before Christmas so that the next morning you wake up and everything would be, ready for Christmas, the presents under the tree. And I remember the whole city looked like Christmas. You would see Christmas, you would hear Christmas songs everywhere. You would see Christmas lights everywhere. And it was a big deal. We really focused a lot on making Christmas a big deal in Linden and even in Georgetown. I remember traveling to Georgetown, the streets were crowded. There was a lot of people shopping to make the season festive. and there was a lot of black cake. Can't forget the black cake and the ginger beer that everybody made sure that they made, especially for Christmas Day. So it's always a big, big deal. Christmas in Guyana.
A big deal indeed. You mentioned the ginger beer and the black cake. I noticed baking and so forth. Mr. Granger laughing. I noticed he looked in another direction. So you were telling something from the kitchen there. You know?
No,
Um,
just Shalon is right, Mark. Shalon is right. There is something about Christmas which is magical. It smells different. It smells like Christmas. The house looks like different. Housewives, mothers, big sisters use that opportunity to change curtains and make the house look different. Everything is, the food, the family, the friendship, the music. You go into the stores sometimes, in November. I don't know what happens in North America, and you just hear carols going, and everybody starts humming. The shop girls are humming, and everybody is just happy, and there is magic, and all of it comes down to, I would say, familyhood or familyness, if there's such a word, because it is the premier festival of the year for families. So, Shalon, thank you for that input, and I'm glad you remember those chores, because the male members of the family wouldn't be involved in sweeping and cleaning, I'm sure.
and that some I remember I had to scrub those floors. I had because it was my you know I had to scrub those floors, sweep the yard, fetch water, and man, you didn't want to see my mouth longer than the Demerara Bridge. Just, um, good evening, and I noticed some of the comments there, and the folks are reflecting on their time. I recall during my time, masquerade and so forth. We used to dance up and wind up. We used to play the long lady or whatever. We used to. I'm sorry, I say wind up because I'm almost certain Mr. Granger never experienced a winding up thing back because Mr.
Don't,
Granger
don't be
probably
sorry.
don't like the wind up thing. But we used to wind up. And the point that I'm making is just to see people in the villages and so forth, neighbors, they're just happy to see you having a fun time and they're laughing. But times have changed. We those guys who are doing the masquerade, they're more interested in what they got to get. And if they may get them in whining. And then when we were
Plunks,
growing up,
plunks.
yeah, it was just that we expected that fun, and then it changed to gift, and then as I became a teenager, closer to 20s and 21 and so forth, it was partying. Those are what you look forward for this season, and then as you get really old, you look forward for the Christmas bonus at your job. Some are not lucky to get much. So it was very little they get, 6.5 or whatever. But we're not here for that at this time of the year. Let's get right back into the next question. Uh, and we can have Miss Washington take a bite of this first. How can observance of the model of the Holy Family help family life in Guyana? Miss Washington?
Right. I think the Holy Family is just a depiction of Mary, the Virgin Mother of Jesus, and Joseph, the Father. And it represents togetherness, unity, all those factors that you would put into a family. So I think looking at the model that was presented to us, if we use it in our family life in Guyana, especially during this festive period, it would involve togetherness, unity, giving, a time of sharing, a time of reflecting. So you would have all the family coming together on that particular day and having communion with each other, as the Christians would say. Christians reference communion with each other or fellowship with each other. So we would, on Christmas in Guyana, the whole family comes together and they have fellowship. They cook together, they bake bread together, they have breakfast with the pepper pot and the bread, and they sit together in unity. And it's a day that they reflect and they celebrate and they laugh with each other. And if you use the Holy Family as that model where you have a unity, a unison, three in one, which is reflective and reference as the Holy Family, the same model with our family. We come together, we in unity, and we eat, we bake bread, we communicate with each other, and we just have some together time. I think if we use that model, just the model, not necessarily to say we're celebrating Christmas, because I do understand some people are moving away from the celebration of Christmas, because some people are now looking back and say, okay, this have reference to a time in our history that was very dark and it was just naturally forced on us. So people are moving away. So you don't have to necessarily say, well, I'm celebrating Christmas, but it's just the possibility of you coming together, using the model to come together with your family, to have a time of togetherness, because it's a day off. You don't have to work. No one have to work on Christmas Day again. You don't have to work on Boxing Day. And you have that time that you can just sit together with your family and eat whatever it is you choose to eat with your family, togetherness, and have that time of unity, and that time to communicate with each other also.
Absolutely, that time to communicate with each other. Also, even some, if you don't talk with each other for the entire year, some of them start preparing from late November to make up. And we already know that this is a Christmas make up, right? But seriously, it's just a time that you want to spend with your family, close family members, close friends also, or even good neighbors. You want to do that. We take this question, Mr. Granger. How can observance of the model of the Holy Family help family life in Guyana?
I'm conscious of the fact that Guyana is a multi-religious society. So the word holy may not resonate with people who are non-Christians. And I would say that it's just a model. Just, you know, even some Christians do not accept, things like, as Shalon mentioned, the virgin birth. Um, some people say, I don't want to get doctrinal now, but Jesus was not what some people think that he was, but he certainly was a prophet, and I think all religions recognize the role of Jesus in establishing, although it was not his will to do so, the religion that we now know as Christianity. But it is a model, and the picture of that, which is normally shown in churches in Jerusalem, in Christmas cards, father, mother, child. It is an ideal model, but it represents the best upbringing of that helpless child. The child in a manger, which might have been an exaggeration, nobody would put the child in a manger with straw and food for cows and so on. But the picture of father, mother, and child, although it might be fictional, then you have the three wise men and the shepherds and the star and all that. It might look theatrical to some, but it is powerful message that here mother, father, and child are the bedrock of the family. And that is the best combination for the child to grow up into responsible adulthood. And I would say that the observance of that model is more important. Whether some people regard as a bit of fiction or an invention, it's not relevant. What is relevant is that it is a powerful tool for creating those building blocks in society. And the child is at the center of that building. The child is the future. The child is at the center of the family. And on the one hand is the mother, on the other hand is the father. Yes, Christians say on the one hand is Mary, the mother, on the other hand is Joseph, the earthly father. But the child is important because the child is the future of humanity. So I would say that the observance of the model could help family life. Just, leave off the doctrine and just take the model and apply it to your own family. And at Christmas time, at least once a year, mother, father, children would come together, as Shalon says, in a sort of show of, if you don't want to call it unity, show of kinship. And people would say, on this day, I recognize my mother, I recognize my father, I recognize my cousins and sisters and brothers and aunts and so on. So the model, I think, is important as a building block of human society.
Well said. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Granger, and to all of you who are listening, watching us from Guyana or outside of Guyana. We say happy holidays to you, all of you, and those of you who have just joined us. Quickly before we go to our final question, I believe it is for tonight. My memory, I want to just share that my first gift was when just landed back a trip from Russia, and it was my dad brought, what was it, a box like this with a big gun, and little boys, that's all we want, guns for boys, dolly for girls, and it was this huge gun, and I was all excited. And the first time I pulled the trigger, because those days people want to join the national service, we want to join because we had respect back those days of policemen and soldiers. We used to stand up in front of our house and just watch the soldiers and salute them. And so that gun as a gift meant a lot for me. And as soon as we opened the present, now mine was a gun, my sister was a big dolly, and I pulled this trigger on this gun, and the trigger broke, the gun broke. I know it was a kind of cheap gun, my father. I was vexed for the entire day, and I never, as old as I am now, I never forget that part. It never. But what's your memory? I was just Miss Washington talking about the first gift that I remember was a gun, and I pulled the trigger, excited. I pulled the trigger, and the thing broke up the whole gun. And years later, I said, "My wait, is a cheap gun my father really got me there for Christmas?" But what's your fond memories about your first gift, Miss Washington?
I remember traditionally in Ghana, girls got dolls and like toy kitchen utensils, things that people back then would think traditionally would go to a girl. So I remember getting some of those cheap dolls, the cheap blonde ones that didn't last very long. But yeah, I do remember getting, there was a time when there was a lot of cheap toys in Ghana. I think were made in China or wherever they were made. But there were a lot of cheap toys. I remember getting a lot of dolls though. That's what I got mostly when I was growing up.
Yeah, I don't need to sound funny with Mr. Granger, but we had our exciting time. I could just imagine Mr. Granger had to make a slingshot on his own, or one the scooter on his own. What was your first? What's your memory of your first gift, Mr. Granger?
I don't, now that you and Sheldon have started to speak, I don't have a very clear picture. It must have been a motor car or a water gun, a water pistol. But one of the best I got as a child would have been a mechanical set. And I was very excited by that. You could just go off with your little spanner and your nuts and bolts and create little things, bridges and little buildings and so on. But that mechanical set was certainly one of the most powerful gifts I got before I went to secondary school. Other than that, I think the motor cars and the water pistols and so on were quite forgettable. Um, but I think the mechanical set really stuck in my mind. That was one of the best. Of course, other people give you things, like a shirt, or some garment, which would be prized. But I think that in terms of sheer entertainment and sheer joy, I mean, I suppose every child expects to get shirts and shoes. The fathers are supposed to get ties and socks, that sort of thing. But that mechanical set stuck in my mind.
Absolutely. I'll save the story about my yachting boots for some other time. But finally, why should the idea of the Holy Family be taught to children in Guyana? Miss Washington?
First thing is I would let people know I do not really support teaching of the Holy Family. So that's my first position. Let's start off with that. I do not really support the teaching of the Holy Family. And one of the things is, it was mentioned earlier, even by Mr. Granger, that not everyone in Guyana is Christian or supports the entire theory of, Jesus and Mary, the Virgin, who give birth to the Son of God, Jesus, and then Joseph the father. Not everybody really support that whole story and the truthfulness of what actually happened. So to begin with, I do not agree with teaching our children about the Holy Family. However, what I do agree with is about teaching our children about the structure of the nuclear family, because that's exactly what the Holy Family represents. And for those people who don't know, religion is culture. So, whatever your culture is, that's what is usually represented in your religion, because religion and culture cannot be separated. So, traditionally, for the Black household in Ghana, I'm not speaking about anywhere else, because as we know, certain African countries and certain places have a different family structure, or what they consider to be family. In Guyana, because of the European influence, because of colonialism, we have developed what is referenced as the nuclear family. So the nuclear family is depicted in the Holy Family. So for the simple reason that we try to encourage a structure where there's a mother, father, and the children together in the home versus having a single parent family, for that single reason, that we would like to encourage to have a wholeness in the family structure, then I would say we should teach the children about the nuclear versus teaching them about the Holy Family. Because not everybody would want their children to be taught anything about the Holy Family. Like I said, and like referenced earlier, that there are different types of religion in Guyana. Therefore, to force our children to be taught about the Holy Family would be a problem. But to teach them about the nuclear family, I would have no objection, because that has been traditionally our family structure. Some people have some people engage in a family structure where there's multiple wives or multiple husbands, and they have multiple children. But in our culture in Guyana, we have embraced the nuclear family structure for decades. So I would say that I would agree that the structure that the Holy Family represents, which is the nuclear family, should be taught in our schools, or should be taught to our children, so that they will understand that this is what brings out the most productive children in society, when they're supported by both the mother and the father. So for that limited purpose, I would say we should teach them or enlighten them, not necessarily about the Holy Family, but about the nuclear family structure.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Washington, there with her take on the Holy Family. And responding to the question is, why should the idea of the Holy Family be taught the children in Guyana? Same question, Mr. David Arthur Granger, sir.
And the title of the program is about the Holy Family. And the truth is that in 2023, the concept of Christmas has completely changed from being a sacred Christian festival to a cultural observance. And it's commercialized, it's entertainment, it's all sorts of things other than holy. So I don't think anyone seriously would quarrel the fact of holiness, in the sense that it was originally conceived to be something which is divinely inspired or sacred. But what is certain is that the family requires that sense of continuity. And it is important for children, for parents, children, to observe that tradition of familyhood, and for it to be transmitted, through the generations. Whether it is holy, the children will grow up with it. The children will decide to themselves whether this thing is sacred or not. Because nowadays, people read different literature, they study different texts. They can benefit from all types of interpretations, as Shalon is doing. The type of rigid interpretation that might have been typical 50 or 100 years ago is no longer valid. And even people who consider themselves religious do not really accept many of the tenets and the dogmas of that were prevalent in Christianity, some years ago. And I agree with Shalon on that part. But what I was saying is that the notion of familyhood or familyness or kinship is important for social solidarity and cohesion, and that should be perpetuated. And everything that is of value that is to be perpetuated has to be done through the children, because the children are the vehicles for perpetuating those ideas and concepts. So I listened carefully to what Sheldon had to say, but I said the idea of familyhood is important to define one's identity and kinship, and that should be taught.
And that's exactly what the nuclear family does, Mr. Granger. The nuclear represents what the Holy Family is: mother, father, and children, or mother, father, child. I
I,
think
I,
it's
I didn't comment on your use of the word nuclear.
it's the same structure. No, I'm just saying it's the same structure that you're kind of alluding to. That the family ship should be something that should be taught, or what children should be aware of it. It's the same thing. Nuclear family. That's the word I preferred over using the Holy Family.
That's
Nuclear
what I
family.
avoided.
Holy smoke.
My-
Holy cow. Yes,
But
guys. Yeah.
Mark, in some African countries, they're celebrating with multiple wives and fathers. So it wouldn't be nuclear. It wouldn't be one
It's
mother,
not only Africa.
one father.
It's not only Africa. There are countries all around the world in which the family structure is does not conform to that nuclear model. But
Right. But
I won't go. I
In
won't do that. I won't go there today.
In Guyana, we're especially focusing on Guyana here. In Guyana, that's what we've traditionally turned to, because when we surrendered our own culture and our own religion and were taken to Guyana, that's what we conform to. And that's what we're still conforming to this day. Even though people got like multiple child mother, when they leave one, they go to a next, and that's the structure that they maintain, a nuclear family structure in Guyana versus having multiple wives. We haven't gone there yet in Guyana. I don't think, even though people have multiple child mother or multiple child father, I think ultimately they still settle down with one. So we haven't returned to our originality. We have stayed confirming to what was given to us.
I'm trying to read Mr. Granger's facial expression there, but we'll leave that for another time as well. Good evening again to all of our listeners. It's a healthy discussion this week, dealing with the Holy Family, and people always want that connection to the family and the spiritual connection, and however they seek to celebrate that, or they move to celebrate that, the family, they want that connection, that spiritual connection as well. And it was a healthy discussion indeed. Miss Washington, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. And David Otto Granger, former president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, it's also always a pleasure to have you, along with members of our audience. Thank you both so much, though, because if I give Mr. Granger an extra minute to say something, Shalon is going to want to say something else, and then we're gonna,
All
we're
I can
gonna
say,
be
I hope you have a happy Christmas season. Thank
we are
you.
gonna
God
get
bless.
we are gonna get like Holy Field, right? Thank you guys so much, and happy holidays to all of our listeners as well. To you and your family, Mr. Granger. To you and your family, Miss Washington. God's richest blessings to all of you as
Also to
well.
you and your family, Mark, and to
Thank
Mr.
you.
Granger and his family, and to all the audience out there. I do hope you enjoy your season, whatever you make of it. God bless.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Happy holidays. God
Thank you.
bless.
Thank you. Yeah.
In the country, all day I back down, me now I come home. In a got jackass, yeah, I for fetchy load. Oh,